a minute. We're not telling them to do that. They do that. It's autonomic. It just happens without us telling it. Well, that's also wired too. Different people wire that in different ways. So that's how people approach things from an emotional level or an activity level, or how social they will be. How are they responsive to people? Do they pay attention to people? So much of that is individual. But again, if you've got that good framework, you do tend to be more adaptable. So I don't think we could say that 6-year-old is going to react that way, the 11-year-old is going to react that way. You really need to know that individual child. So if you're assigned to one of those kids, go back to the 4, nutrition, development, including language, socialization, sleep habits. Where is that kid? But to give a blanket statement as to how a 6-year-old is going to react to that, I don't think is possible. I just respect individuality too much to try and give a pat answer to that. So, so that's kind of good. And then I was asked to give a couple of I talked about development and things of that nature. As I mentioned, I am going to have these books available, but I do have a nice thing. But I want you to again think of that electrician wiring house, but also the cascade. So, because the brain truly does, those nerves truly do go down the spinal cord like water down a waterfall. So again, the newborn will look at you. Why? Because that part of the brain, they need to look and see where things are coming from. They will suck. Why? Well, that's the only thing they can do. Like, we can go ride or bike, or we can go for a jog. All they can do is suck. Well, why? They got to eat. So that's there ready. If they can't eat, again, back to Maslow's level 1, you can't live. So that's in there right at birth. If it isn't, they die. So that's developed. And then you get into 2 months old, and they begin to get up on their forearms. Again, the nerves have come down into their shoulders. That again allows them to get up and maybe look for food. 4 months, the nerves go down a little bit more. They begin to roll over. Why is that important? Well, now they can go. They know they need it. They can now go get the food. They can sit up, begin to reach, transfer. They can reach for food. 7, 8, 9 months, they begin to what we call creep. That's what they call that G.I. Joe creep. And then they move into crawl. Again, nerves going down. Then they begin to pull up. They see that bread on the table. I'm going to go over and get it. They can reach for it. And then at a year of age, they can actually walk. So, but again, I think if you just keep in mind that going down would help you. And then those were gross motor things I gave you. And then as far as the fine motor, the higher functions, language, hearing is crucial. That's why in the state of Virginia, every child by law has to have called a otic emissions test. It's a way to tell if the neurons in the cochlea part of our brain are receiving sound. It's a great thing, because if they're not hearing, that affects language. I mentioned language is the number one way to tell for school success, and then fine motor is the second way to tell for school success. So, is that kid hearing? And then for language at 4 months, are they beginning to coo and babble? At 9 months, we expect some more specifics, sounds, actually, consonants. At a year of age, we like an attempt at a word, ma, da, an actual attempt at a sound for an object. And then by 15 months, you want that more defined, like mama, and actually point to it. Pointing is actually very important around 15 months, because that shows that child wants a shared experience. They realize you're in their environment. They've taken you in. They trust you, and they want to share something with you. So we look for pointing at 15 months. And at 18 months, we look for 5 to 10 words in the vocabulary, not 5 to 10 words together, but door, food, mama. That's a big one at 18 months. And then the critical one for language is 2 years old. Easy to remember it is you want 2 words together. Go park, mommy's juice, Johnny hit. That's crucial. That's a biggie. If they're not hitting that, that's a yellow flag, or depending on what else is going on, a red flag. And by 2.5, you want 3 or 4 words together. Go park now. Johnny wants juice. You know, we don't expect pronouns till 3 years old, so that we won't say I want juice. That's 3 years old, but you know, baby wants juice. You want 3 words together by 2.5, and then by 3, you expect a 5 to 6 word sentence that's about 75, 90% intelligible by a third person. So the mother or father usually understands the child because they know them so well, and from pointing all that knows what they want. But if a neighbor comes over and says, "Oh, how's Johnny doing?" And Johnny says, "I like my fire truck," you know, that's great. That's, you know, a little sentence, and that neighbor understood him. That's a good sign. So by 3, we expect small sentences and 75, 90% intelligible. So those are kind of the main ones that I think are important to realize. But as again, when you have a child that, you know, you're responsible for, to, you know, go to a reference and read up on that age group and ask questions would be appropriate.
Dr. Murphy, can you keep going with sort of the 4 to 6 range? You give us some of the basic milestones of physical and language, things that you would be looking at as a pediatrician, and going up to 18.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, by 4, you want them to begin to be social and come out of that, you know, what's called universe stage, where, you know, they feel the world revolves around them. Like what you'll hear other toddlers or just play side by side. They'll be in a room and there's 6, you know, 2.5-year-olds with 6 different toys, not sharing. That's called the universal stage. They feel the universe revolves around them. They don't need other people. They're in that self stimulation, and they just care about what's coming to them. But by 4, you want to see some social, that you want them to have a friend. So you would, if they're in preschool, you'd want to say, "Who's your friend?" You know, so Ashley and Johnny and James. Great. You know, that's what you want, because that means they're starting to come out of themselves, and that also gives you a little sense of their language too. There's a lot of tricks we use is to ask something, but I'm looking for 3 or 4 different things with that one question. And then you want them also be able to, at 4, another biggie is to, when they draw a picture, by 3, when they draw a picture, they should have a abdomen and a head, not just sticks. So you ask a 3-year-old, draw a picture of mommy, and they just draw a circle with a stick coming out of it. Where's the stomach? You know, I say, oh, you know, then they'll draw a circle for something. So by 3, they should have a head and an abdomen, you know, a chest, and the extremities. And by 4, when they're coloring, they should stay in the lines. You know, kids begin to scribble at 15 months. You know, give them a pencil and a piece of paper, they'll scribble at 15 months. But by 4, you give them a coloring book, they should stay in the line. So again, that shows that their nervous system has matured to the point where they realize, hey, that's important. So give them a coloring book, and if they just take a crayon and, you know, scratch all over the page and ignore the lines of the face or the house, whatever, that's a signal that they haven't progressed as well as they had. And by 5, they should begin to show interest in wanting to tie their shoes, you know, dressing themselves well, being able to have what we call self-control, wait online, you know, like when they're at a park or something, you know, instead of pushing somebody and, you know, say they're on line to go off a diving board, they get in queue, so to speak, instead of pushing ahead and going ahead. That's something we look for at 5. And again, talking well, better sentence structure, better talking, more socialization, wanting to be with friends. Piaget, he was a Swiss psychologist that came up with 3 stages for kids. He called birth to 6 sensory motor. Those kids kind of learned by repetition, touching. They can't abstract much. That's why a lot of kids will put things in their mouth or want to feel things, or you go to a store and kids are touching bags and things like that. They learn by touching and feeling. And then between 7 and 11, he called that concrete formation. That was everything's black, white, no gray in the middle. Like you tell that 8-year-old a red, just to tease them, a red shirt. That's a nice blue shirt. They won't get that you're joking and playing with them. Say, no, it's a red shirt. It's red. It's not blue at all. Everything's black, white, no gray in the middle. That's called concrete formation, and that's why they start to get very worried about death around 8. If mommy's sick, she's going to die. And that's real bad because they know how crucial she is. She's going to die. So they start to get a little, until 8, they don't understand death till that, but they begin to realize, hey, if mom's gone, I don't get my breakfast, I don't get dinner, I don't get a story at night, they certain things will not happen, black, white, no gray in the middle. And then around 12 and above, they call that formal operations. That's the abstract thought. Why did General Washington cross the Delaware River? Who was General Washington? Why did he cross? When did he do it? Why did he do it? Like we could stand here tonight and talk about politics in Afghanistan. We have abstract power, where kids under 12 can't. And again, I want you to think of that diagram I showed you of the brain coming together, those association areas, those higher functions coming together. And again, I mentioned that keeps developing till mid-20s. Piaget does, and he was a Swiss psychologist. He died in 1980, but he was, kind of known for those 3 stages of that. So sensory motor, birth to 6, concrete formation 7 to 11, and then formal operations 12 to on. And with maturity comes perception. I mentioned the nervous system develops till mid-20s. Sometimes we forget that as adults. Our brains are formed. We see something, we frame it, put it in perspective, see a big picture. That's adult behavior. Kids live now. That's why a lot of kids don't have good self-control. I also do some work with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, so I'm very familiar with that. And they just live now. Like you tell them 100 times, don't do that, but in the moment, they do it. Because we know, if something's wrong, you got, high cholesterol, whatever, oh my God, high cholesterol, that's bad. It could gather in my heart. I could have an early heart attack and not be able to see my kids get married or support my family, whatever. We start eating celery and take Lipitor, whatever. We act on it. Where, kids, as they're growing up, that's why teenagers are felt to be so impulsive, and they feel they're invulnerable because they don't have that perceptive ability that comes with the nervous system maturing. And that's why that old expression, he, she will grow out of it. And kids do, as you've seen in your own lives, your own kids, they do mature, they do get better as that electrician does more wiring. So, but remember that they don't have the perceptive ability. Like the teen pregnancy is a big problem. You've told them 1,000 times what to do, but in the moment they don't do it. So that's something that is neurological too. But again, if we're there to help them, and especially teens, they say, oh, I don't want to be around my parents. Little story, somebody will ask a father or whatever to drive them to meet their friends somewhere, and the father will want to get out and meet them, go meet the parents. No, Dad, stay in the car. They don't want the parents around, so they're thinking, well, the teens don't need us. They do. They don't buy that. They want our advice. They need us to guide them and give them support. Especially if you were there from the beginning and provided that love and support. They'll come to you. They know enough that they know they need you when things go bad, and that's when kind of your dividend comes in. All that work you did over the years is to your benefit because they trust you and you can help them get over rough spots. Okay. Yeah.
Could you talk for 30 minutes or so about the impact of fetal alcohol syndrome on the development of the child?
Okay. Yeah. That would be
Physical, mental, and emotional. And
sure.
I was kidding about 30 minutes.
Oh, sure.
Briefly.
No, but that's actually a nice physiologic example of messing up the electrician. Alcohol, ETOH, is a molecule, and it's toxic to the neuron, and that neuron is sending messages and signals. Remember, we talked about 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synapses. That's where the neurons talk to each other, and they talk to each other. There's actual space with electron microscopes now. We know. I mean, there are spaces like they call 2 angstroms. That's a nanometer. And there's a space with a gap. Well, it has to be crossed, and it's crossed by neurotransmitters, and that is, epinephrine, glutamate, GABA, serotonin, all this. That's why, people with depression, they're treated with different medication, chemical imbalance. They're treated with different meds to try and get the right balance. Well, ETOH, ethyl alcohol, is a molecule that breaks down enzymes that are working to make those connections. So kids with fetal alcohol syndrome, what you'll see physically is they have small heads called microcephaly. And they'll have a short upper lip. It's called the short philtrum. That's the distance from the bottom of the nose to the top of the lip. It's very short. And they're usually short, small kids. And a lot of them have, the real bad cases have hepatitis right from birth because the ETOH also affected their liver. But the main thing is it does cause mental retardation and learning disabilities, because the electrician never got to finish. You threw some stones at the electrician when they were trying to wire the house. So that's a beautiful example of why alcohol, drugs are so important, because that messed up that wonder. There's so many things we don't understand, but that wonder of how it all came together. So it's so if you're with a family and the mother, you're taking care of one child, and you see the mother sip a beer or whatever, immediately talk to her about it. And we don't know if just one molecule of ETOH will cause a problem. Just the law of averages, it probably won't, but we don't know. So obviously we say no alcohol at all, because if you say no, then hopefully they'll take just 2 when you leave, as opposed to 2 6-packs or whatever. Because the reality is, some of the people my age or slightly older, they, back in the 50s and stuff, it wasn't unusual for mothers to have a beer or 2 or even a martini. They weren't alcoholics by any means, but a lot of the kids did well. So, now again, that would also depend on where that fetus was in their development. Remember, I mentioned the first 8 weeks are crucial, and the first 12 weeks are really important. After that, the fetus just kind of keeps growing. But that's so think of it that way. Think
Would
of
the
it.
alcohol effect, if the mother kept after birth and was nursing and kept on alcohol, would that affect the neurons at that point in the development?
It's still not good for the baby, but not as for him, because by the time a baby is born at 9 months, a lot of the connections haven't made. They're still being made, as I mentioned, to mid-20s.
Right.
But once the baby is born, they made that 9 months. They're pretty tough. I say there's some theories that out of every 100 conceptions, 75 to 80 are miscarried. Never even made it.